to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
We're back with episode 40 of the Leo Training Podcast. This week, my guest is my good friend, Mitch Sadowsky. Mitch is the director of golf fitness at Lake Nona Golf and Country Club in Orlando, Florida. He works with professional and amateur golfers and athletes on functional strength and speed training. He's a member of the National Strength and Conditioning Association. He's also a Level 3 fitness certified member of the Titleist Performance Institute and holds certifications as an SFG Kettlebell Instructor, USA Weightlifting Level 2 Advanced Lifting Coach, Sports Performance Specialist, and holds certificates in Functional Movement Systems and Active Isolated Stretching. Some of Mitch's clients have included PGA Touring professionals Ian Poulter and Graeme McDowell, European Tour players Maarten, Lafeber, and Gary Boyd, and Canadian Tour player Charlie Bull. In addition to Mitch's role as the director of golf fitness at Lake Nona, he is also the owner and president of Mitchell Strength and Performance. As a part of that role, he works directly as the strength coach for Olympia High School Golf, Florida Mojo Volleyball Club, and the Eckerd College Indoor and Sand Volleyball programs. Mitch attended Ball State University, receiving his Bachelor of Arts in 1998 and his Master's of Science in 2000 while competing for the men's volleyball team. He served as team captain during his senior campaign, and Mitch played in 3 Final Four championships while competing at Ball State. In this interview, Mitch and I sit down and we discuss how to strength train for a golfer, what demands are placed on the body as a rotational athlete, his experience at Plan Strong, and that he'll be hosting Charlie Weingroff for Training Equals Rehab 3. Without further ado, let's roll to episode 40 with Mitch Sadowsky. Mitch Sadowsky, welcome to the Leo Training Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on to the show. I'm really excited to have you on this afternoon, and we're going to have a great conversation talking about golfers, golf fitness, and rotational athletes.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you having me on. I've seen your past guest list, and one of my favorite quotes is by Isaac Newton. If I've seen a bit further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. So I feel like I'm standing on some pretty big shoulders here.
No, man, it's great to have you on, and we got a great topic list planned for the show. So I know we're going to cover some great material that people will put to good use. But I like the way to roll into the beginning of the interview with that quote. Very nice. So let's just kick things off. And why don't you introduce yourself? Let everybody, the audience, know your background, where you're located, what type of clientele that you work with, and what you kind of focus on, and that type of thing.
Yeah, well, I have kind of an interesting background. So I'm located in Orlando, Florida. I'm the director of golf fitness at Lake Nona Golf and Country Club, and also own my own training business outside of the club, Mitchell Strength and Performance. And been strength training for a long time. I got into my own strength training in high school. I was a college athlete. I played volleyball at Ball State University, and then played a little bit professionally indoor after college and on the beach, and coached college for a number of years at Georgetown and Florida State, and was always pretty involved with the strength training aspect of our teams. And one of the things that really interested me while I was playing was, I could squat a fair amount. Spent a lot of time in the weight room. And I want to know why some of my teammates could jump higher than me. Put the time in the weight room, and there's still, guys with 40-inch verticals that, were apparently allergic to iron. And here I was grinding my way out. And, so I started spending more and more time in our human performance lab. And at the time, Dr. William Kramer and Dr. Dave Pearson with our human performance lab, I spent a lot of time with them. trying to figure out, exactly what went into vertical jumps. Like why could I squat more and not jump as high as these other guys? Because I could move some weight. And so that just got me interested in the strength training aspect. And when I decided to leave college coaching, it was just sort of a happenstance type thing. I moved down to Orlando and started doing some strength training, and had an opportunity to start working with some golfers at Lake Nona through a very good friend of mine, and decided that's sort of an area I wanted to dive headfirst into. And so I've been working with golfers for probably about 6 years, and been at the club for 5. And I grew up golfing also, and as I started to learn more and more about the golf swing, it's not too dissimilar from volleyball. You'd think they're pretty different sports, but they're fairly similar in their physical requirements. So, that's kind of my path in a nutshell.
Very cool, man. Just curious, what are some similarities? Because I wouldn't have thought that myself off the bat. So, what are some similarities between volleyball and golf?
Well, when you look at the power aspects, you're looking at both as a rotational sport. Volleyball players have to rotate to hit, and they do have to have a whipping mechanism. In volleyball, the whipping mechanism, when they're off the ground, will start from the hip. In golf, obviously, the whipping mechanism starts from the ground up. Volleyball players do have to create a tremendous amount of momentum while they're jumping in order to transfer the force they're creating, the linear force through their approach, into vertical thrust off the ground, and then also to use that momentum to accelerate their arm through impact of the ball. And when you say arm through impact of the ball, it's the same thing with the golf swing. They're trying to drive force from the ground up into their hips, creating a rotational mechanism through their torso, and then expressing that speed through the head of the club into the ball, as opposed to expressing that speed through the hand into the ball. So, you can look at force vectors and a lot of that stuff for volleyball as well. But, just if you look at the rotational aspects of a volleyball swing and a golf swing, they're both fairly similar.
Very cool. That's awesome. So what are some things that we want to pay particular attention to if we are going to be working with a golfer in terms of like assessing them or evaluating them kind of at the beginning of the strength and conditioning phase before they start strength training? Obviously you're TPI certified. So what's your approach?
First thing I do is I ask them about their goals. I ask them why. And then we'll take them through a full TPI screen. So we'll look at their movement patterns, and I'll add in a couple of the top tier SFMA assessments, and I'll also add in some of the FMS assessments that aren't covered through the TPI screen. Now, there are a lot of redundancies in it. I really like the active straight leg raise, which is not included in the TPI screen, although there is a single leg toe touch and a toe touch involved, which is similar to the SFMA top tier. I'll add in the upper body rotational assessments that they do in the SFMA as well, and that kind of gives me a better picture of how they're moving. And that happens for everyone. I can't really start a program without knowing where to go, and so that assessment's really, really key for whatever we're going to do. After the assessment, then we'll do some of the TPI power testing, the seated med ball toss, vertical jump, single arm press, single arm pulls, and some of the other vertical thrust screens that they have. And that just gives me an idea of how much weight they can move. Are they meeting tour standards for strength? And then that gives us a pretty good idea of where to go from there.
Awesome. Do you take in any consideration for say a golfer that's been playing a lot longer versus someone that's just beginning, just in terms of some of the demands that may have already been placed on their body from being in the sport so long?
Yeah, being a golfer, it's a lot like being in the gym. I think you and I would both agree, and a lot of strength coaches would agree, we would rather have someone at the zero training age that we can kind of mold and not have to worry about unwrapping faulty patterns. Same thing goes for golf. And I'll use my own bad golf game as a good example. You swing one way poorly for a long enough time, it's gonna feel really, really uncomfortable trying to learn a new pattern. And so, we can look at it one of two ways. One is that bad pattern of golf and a bad golf swing a function of bad movement, or is bad movement completely irrelevant to the bad swing? So, because there are some good movers with bad swings, and there are some, bad movers with good swings, and you can match everything up different ways. So, mostly for me, what the assessment can tell me is, one, are they moving efficiently? And two, is there a risk for injury? I mean, we start adding the amounts of speeds and loads that you create through the golf swing, and we can probably pick 3 areas that are highly at risk for injury in golf, and that's back, elbow, and shoulder. And so, if we can keep somebody golfing long enough, and we can help them golf a little bit better, then that's really what we're in it for.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what are some of the kind of crossovers, just kind of broadening this out from just golf? And you touched on volleyball already, but any rotational athlete. So, and that most people may not look at it through that lens, but if you're a runner, you can make the argument, and you should, that you're a rotational athlete, or some that are very, I should say, asymmetrical, where you're really kind of loading one side of the body through a repetitive motion. So like a baseball pitcher or a rower, that type of thing. So what are some considerations for other rotational athletes that you would take into account?
Well, I know a number of people have said it before, so I'm just going to kind of echo them. For me, it's not strength; it's deceleration. Can the athlete decelerate their speed and the speed they're trying to generate? If they can't control that speed and decelerate it properly, then they're really at risk for a breakdown in the chain. And Dr. Tom House talks about that in his speed development with pitching. About they try to throw just as hard left-handed for a right-handed pitcher. For my golfers, we try to do just as much, if we do rotational work. But if we're doing rotational work, we do, I actually try to do twice as much rotational work on the non-dominant side than on the dominant side. What's really interesting is how some of the better golfers, and I'm not going to say all of them, but how some of the better golfers are actually ambidextrous. Phil Mickelson's called lefty, and the only thing he does in life left-handed is golf. He's right-handed. One of the players that I work with that is on the Mackenzie Tour, PGA Canada, Hank Lebiota. Hank's right-handed. He grew up playing baseball as a right-handed baseball player. He throws right-handed, and he golfs. That, I think, is one thing that gives him an advantage because, like you're talking about, you can get fairly one-sided. In the golf swing, you're pushing through for a right-handed golfer, you're pushing through your right side, you're pulling through your left side. So your right side gets used to accelerating, your left side gets used to decelerating. Well, once we've switched those patterns, so I can try to get the left side accelerating more, the right side decelerating, the body tends to become a little bit more symmetric in its movement patterns. And usually when guys come in off the road, they will mold into that. The biggest thing that I see is a dropped right shoulder, a high and tight left shoulder for a right-handed golfer, and they usually have more range of motion through their T-spine rotating into their right than into their left because they're so used to slowing down in the left that just naturally the body will tighten up to put on those brakes, and we want to take those brakes off, but train them to decelerate.
Yeah, I love that the emphasis on deceleration, because if you don't have that inherent control there, that's when you can really see a huge risk for injury.
Yeah, I was having this conversation this morning that, for volleyball players, everyone wants to talk about jumping higher, and the body's going to jump higher when it moves well. Okay. You're going to be limited by genetics. I hate to break everybody's heart that, through enough jump training and squats and deadlifts and swings, you can, get a 40-inch vertical. But if you're at 24 inches, you're not getting to 40. But what we can do is get you from 24 to 30. That's, I won't say that's not a problem, but it's certainly doable. But how much of it are you doing? And Dan John doesn't really do a lot of rotational training with his throwers. They get a lot of rotation in their sport. My golfers get a lot of rotation in their sport. Baseball players, pitchers, when you go on down the line, they get a lot of their sport in their sport. So for a volleyball player, I would say that the two biggest things for volleyball players outside of rolled ankles are ACL injuries and shoulder injuries. And where do those come from? We see more ACL injuries happening at the end of practice when athletes are tired. And there are a lot of physiological factors outside of that going on. But, basically, if you get tired, it's not the body's ability to accelerate. It's the body's ability to control deceleration and stabilize. So, I don't do a ton of jumping with my jumping athletes. I don't do a ton of rotating with my rotational athletes. It's controlling their rotation, controlling their deceleration, teaching volleyball players how to land properly, in addition to how to take off properly. I think those are the biggest keys for me, because it's, first it's obviously increasing their work capacity, but keeping them on their field or court of play is first and foremost. Performance enhancement will come after that. And then skill acquisition is, it's the top of the FMS pyramid for a reason. So, I kind of follow those rules as well. I try not to rotate my golfers, too much. I just want to make sure they can rotate efficiently.
Yeah, for sure. So you would just be looking for a little bit more symmetrical balance in regards to any rotational work, just in terms of being able to move equally or ideally equally side to side, not necessarily training for rotational power. Right.
And we still want to focus sequences from the ground up, but rotational power will be probably one of the last things that we work on in whatever cycle we're in.
For sure. Now, so kind of building on that, so because they get so much rotation in the sport, do you spend a lot of time working on like anti-rotational exercises, like say Palloff press or anything in that kind of regard, just so that they're developing more of the ability to control their body and deceleration? So I guess the question is, what are some examples of exercises that you may program for a client or an athlete to help them learn control and deceleration?
Yeah, Palloff press for sure. I probably have 10 variations of Palloff press that we'll go through. I love renegade rows. I would say shoulder tap planks and up down planks are two staples that we do pretty much every day, just trying to teach them anti-rotation, sling training, tying their opposite hip to their opposite shoulder, so left shoulder to right hip and vice versa. We're trying to teach that probably more than anything. Once we get through teaching them kettlebell swings, we'll do two-hand swings for power generation, but for anti-rotation, you'll be hard-pressed to find any dynamic exercise better than a single-arm swing to teach anti-rotation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know when I started learning the one-arm swing, going from the two-hand, it was it was a very kind of sobering experience because I realized how all the imbalances from rowing came, flooded right to the top there. And it kind of is one of those things that it just exposes any imbalances or weaknesses that you have on the left or right side of the body.
Oh, for sure. And, you can take rowing and apply it to a lot of sports where, rowing I love because it can expose a lot of weaknesses really quickly, especially for desk workers. You'll kind of see that kyphotic position. Rowers tend to spend a lot of time in that. Volleyball players especially. Golfers can get kyphotic. We see the shoulders drop when they're in that slight hinge position at address over the ball. So we're trying to fight that. The only difference between rowing and those other sports is you guys are doing a lot of posterior chain work, where on other sports are pushing, there's so much anterior load that we're really focusing on the pulls to sort of help balance everything out. But the reason why I like the single arm swings is it really gets them to focus on their hinge. It gets them to focus on the posture. And it really just gets them mentally focused on what they're doing. The kettlebell is undefeated. It will always win. And when it teams up with gravity, it can be a great tool, or it can cause some havoc. So, once we get all of the basics taken care of, we really like using that to either shore up those weaknesses or get the athlete really focused on what they're doing.
I love that quote. That's awesome. The kettlebell is undefeated when teamed up with gravity. That one's great.
I don't think there's any kettlebell instructor that hasn't dropped the bell at some point. And I'm guilty of that too. There may be a little bit of a dent on our floor where I missed a switch, and I can tell you that dent is the exact size a 32 kilo bell makes from my shoulder height. Yeah. But yeah, it does teach you a lot of things, and really gets you focused on what you're doing, and that way you're a little bit more cognizant of your movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. The demand for body awareness and how you're moving through space while trying to generate a lot of power and speed.
Yeah, and even small changes make a really big difference. When one of my golfers got off the road, we came in and we worked on a number of things. We went out to the range, and he was just a little bit out of sorts still. And we made one small change. Now, I'm not a golf instructor by any means, but I can see posture and I understand movement. So all I did is tell him, hey, pull your shoulders back a little bit. And that was it. And all of a sudden he goes from a pull hook to hitting a slight draw. And that's really what we want to be able to get them to understand is their body position and how there can be postural breakdowns and what the cause and causality is in certain actions and reactions. So getting them to understand that is not to say I can fix your pull hook by you just pulling your shoulders back, but it shows you how important the training is and posture is into sport performance.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So kind of building off of that, let's talk about two other subtopics you kind of had in here: strength mobility, and then getting into we could talk about the rep ranges and stuff. How many reps are too many?
Yeah. Typical golfer comes in and says, hey, I want to hit the ball further. And I say, why? I would prefer them to hit it straighter where it's easy, but at the TPI Power Coach 2, we were having this conversation, and, Greg Rose brought up a good point and two really good graphs that says you're wrong. One is you take a look at 7 of the last 8, I believe, leaders in driving accuracy lost their tour card the following year.
From injury?
Nope. They weren't winning money.
Oh, okay.
I think last year's top 10 in driving accuracy made $4 million
Wow.
combined. And the top 10 in driving distance made a combined, I think, 29 million. And now the tours come out with driving accuracy combined with distance, and number of other metrics. But they do want to hit the ball further, and so just by adding a little bit more mobility, figuring out where the breakdown is, they'll move a little bit better, and they'll probably hit the ball a little bit farther. We just want to look at why aren't they moving well? At some point there was a breakdown, and the body stopped moving efficiently. So we want to look at the mobility parameters, where they are now, and how we want to get there. And we can look at it one of two ways. One, we can just fix the pattern. And so people who come in may not know how to squat. So we're going to fix their squat. They may just, be a little bit valgus, or their core control's off. There are a couple of very simple fixes that we can do, and then we can get them strength training fairly early rather than taking a month to do all of these correctives. We can take our correctives and make those our rest periods between our strength exercises, so that we can get them stronger quicker while at the same time making them better movers. Because you can really get lost in the minutia of correctives and mobility and activation and all this. I don't want to spend a month rolling around on the floor when we can take somebody and put them into a wall squat or an FMT assisted squat, and that's their loaded pattern for right now. And then we do some crawls, we do some original strength work, we're teaching to get up in between that, and we can bounce back and forth between exercises, and that's our mobility session. But really it's a strength session with their needs addressed.
Yeah, that's coming back to the kettlebell. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about it, is that when you do a good job of being accurate with the initial evaluation up front, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, I don't want to make it seem like it's the catch-all for everything, but you do address a lot of mobility and strength issues, and you can quickly and time efficiently move from exercises and kind of address a lot of those needs that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and you can look at let's just go through the most, I would say probably the most important, if there is one, but I'd say that maybe the most popular is a better choice. But so the most popular assessment is an overhead squat. We do that with the TPI, we do that in SFMA, we do that in FMS. It's not a strength, it's just, how are you moving? Can you tie everything together? If somebody can't overhead squat, or they just can't squat, why is that? I mean, you can look at glutes, you can look at, if they're valgus, you can look at dorsiflexion, you can toe touch, you can look at all of these things, and it might just boil down to they don't know how to squat. They're just a bad squatter. And you can actually key them into being a better squatter very quickly, when you could have spent all this time doing correctives and glute strengthening and clamshells and all this other stuff, when we probably just could have stripped all that away and said, well, you're just a bad squatter, go against the wall and let's practice your squats. If you're a bad chipper, we can look at single leg stability, we can look at all this other stuff, or we can just go back out on the range and just work on your chipping.
Right.
So
right.
We try to take that patterning in that same way.
No, for sure. I mean, that's an excellent point. It's not always necessarily tied to an inherent, mobility or stability issue. It just might be that they need to learn how to kind of just move their body through that squat pattern.
Right.
Because they've never really spent any time doing it.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. And then I have to say too, I saw on your Instagram feed the other day, so it kind of ties in nicely to everything we were just talking about. You had this great photo of one of the athletes you're working with. He was doing a bottoms up single arm front squat.
Yeah.
In the rack position.
Yep.
So the caption, I don't want to do it injustice, but the caption was great because it talked a lot about what you were just saying. So maybe you could just quickly kind of summarize how that type of exercise addresses a lot of the rotational, anti-rotational, and movement pattern efficiency that we're looking for rotational athletes to get.
Yeah, man, that's probably one of my favorite things to do with my golfers. If outside of a swing, I would say some type of unilaterally loaded squat pattern. Mike's a strong mover. We're working on making him a better mover. Full disclosure, Mike has eagled every hole at Lake Nona Golf and Country Club except for 2 of them.
Wow. So
it's a pretty impressive feat. In fact, he's aced one of the par 4s. And when you see that par 4, you look at it going, how did somebody get a hole in one? And Mike will even tell you it was a lot of luck. But so Mike's a very good golfer. And what we work on with him is he can become fairly asymmetric with how much he plays. So, for us, a bottoms up really works a lot of shoulder stability. And for me, shoulder stability is going to come from the not necessarily just from the shoulder, but core control, the lat complex, abdominal interaction with everything. So, going bottoms up will help with some shoulder stability issues that he has, and putting him in that position really gets him to understand the stability requirements needed for a squat. And, he pulls a lot through his left arm, as most right-handed golfers do. So keeping that arm a little bit more stable will help pulling through the shot. And, we're always looking for ways that we can challenge that unilateral pattern in golfers. So when you squat down with weight in one hand, you'll have a tendency to lean into that side and lean into that hip. And most golfers will actually lean into their right hip because they're loading rotationally, internal rotation into that hip. So, if we can get him to understand how to push harder into the left side, that will even everything out. And Mike's down for it. There's not a lot of people who are really comfortable in that bottoms up position, whether they're standing or in a squat. But every one of my golfers will do a front squat unilateral load from a front rack position. It's just whether, if they've got good shoulder stability, we'll just go from a regular rack hold. If they need some extra shoulder stability, we'll challenge them with a lighter bottoms up bell.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Very cool. Very cool. So let's kind of segue, that fits in nicely. Let's segue right into talking about, appropriate amount of reps and sometimes why we can get caught up in the number, the quantity versus the quality.
Yeah, that's a big rabbit hole.
Yes, it is.
Really, I guess when it comes to athletes versus general fitness, I try to keep an eye, or at least somewhat of a tab on what they're doing in their sport per day, because those reps per day have to get factored into what I'm doing with them. If I'm doing med ball tosses with my golfers, I still have to keep in mind that they're going to be swinging 200 to 300 times per day in their sport. How much do I really want to load rotational patterns with them? They're going to be in a hinge position, putting, chipping, hitting. So how much do we need to spend in that hinge position? We want to strengthen the hinge, but we don't want to wear it out. I don't want somebody coming in before they go to practice doing a 10-minute EMOM, so every minute on the minute of 10 single arm swings each side. So we're doing 200 swings in that time, and then they're going to go out and they're going to be just absolutely wiped out. Their CNS is going to be fried, and they're going to go try to perform fine motor skills. So the rep range, it depends on what phase we're in. If we're in more of a hypertrophy phase, we're going to set the appropriate amount of repetitions in there. if we're in a sort of a strength or power phase or a speed phase, we're going to set the appropriate amount of repetitions in. But I want quality before I look at anything else. So if I'm seeing someone start to slow down, if I see form start to go, I don't care how many reps I have scheduled for that, we're done. We'll rest until we can get some more quality in. If somebody can do, let's say we have 6 reps planned and they're starting to fade out about 5, our next set, we're probably going to stay closer to 3 or 4, just so I can get that quality and that explosiveness. We'll probably drop our rest time a little bit then. If we're going right up to their wall and they're starting to fry out a little bit, then the cost of training is going to be longer. My rest periods are going to have to be longer for them to get the same amount. So I'm going to cut the reps down. We'll still get the total amount of reps, but we're going to get higher quality out of those. So instead of doing like a set of 8, we'll break down and maybe do a set of 5 and then a set of 3, or a set of 3 and then a set of 5, and start to add some variability to consistent exercise as opposed to adding in variety.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I like that a lot. And I think you made a great point. Just again, I love how you're taking into context what that athlete or that individual is doing throughout their entire day. Because I feel like in general we can have a tendency to be like get very sort of micro goal or micro focus. This is what's happening at this training session, and it's like, well, there's a lot of other variables and factors that come into play in terms of how fresh that person is when they walk through your door. So there's a lot of times, similar to you, I adjust on the fly quite a bit with clients, because most people are coming in and they might have had a tough day at work, or, they had a hard training session 1 or 2 days beforehand and they're still carrying in some fatigue, and all those are variables that factor into the type of, session that you're going to have with them on that given day.
Oh, for sure. And that's, Joe, that's such a good point, because we forget as strength coaches where we live in our gym. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever had a bad day. I mean, I'm around iron all day long. How bad could it be? And we forget that there are people coming in that, maybe one of your golfers comes in and he shot 84 the day before. Or, someone's having a bad day at work, or relationship issues. If you're a high school coach and you're dealing with females, there's something popping up every single day. And we have to take that into account, because the emotional state of training somebody, I don't want to stress somebody out physically who's already stressed out emotionally. You're just going to get somebody who's fried. They're going to push back. If you're trying to cue them through reps, they're not going to hear the cue. They're going to hear, I'm not doing this well enough.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Why are you getting on me? So you don't necessarily want that pushback. I love reading. I read as much as I can. And I like to get away from my occupation when I can. So I end up reading a lot of spy novels. I love the Jason Bourne books. I love the Brad Thor series. Just started getting into reading Lee Child and the Jack Reacher series. And they all have military background protagonists. And one of the things that struck me in the Jason Bourne books was he kept repeating over and over in one of them, rest is a weapon. I have stuff to do. I need to go here, but rest is a weapon. And that's just, it really stuck with me. We can, as strength coaches, we can use rest as a weapon, where a fresher athlete is better than a non-fresh athlete. So if somebody comes in, and I'll use my high school volleyball players because today is the first day of our preseason. We have a camp before we go into preseason next week. And today's the first day of that. So I have to take into consideration that I have some players who have not stopped playing volleyball for 2 years.
Wow.
Like, just think about that. Like, they have not stopped for more than a week or two for 2 years. And we start our high school season at the beginning of August. Our season will end somewhere at the end of October, beginning of November. They'll go to tryouts the day after the high school season ends. They've got volleyball tryouts. Some of them have tryouts coming up this weekend. Then they go into their high school season. Then they go right into their club season. They may have a couple weeks off there. December's a slower month, but not what we would consider a good rest period for a growing teenage athlete. Then they're full go in January. And they're full go 2 practices a week, 2 to 3 tournaments a month, up until at least May. Some of them will go into July, beginning of July. And then they, some athletes will take 2 to 3 weeks off, and then we start up all over again. Or even more, they will go and do camps for another 2 weeks before we go into our camp, before we go into our season. So I'm like, you're not jumping. Like, there's other things that we can work on, but you are not going to jump this week. And I have to stick to those guns because we've got to get that athlete the appropriate amount of rest. Dr. James Andrews talks a lot about this. We're just crushing our kids with way too many repetitions. And if they're in one sport, it's way too many single sport athletes. I mean, he's doing Tommy John surgeries on 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. And so we have to understand that, more isn't better. It's such a Western philosophy of more is better, and more is just more. If I can get 5 good repetitions and 6 is questionable, I just want 4. And we've got to do a better job of managing that. And if you get a stressed out athlete, half the time our warm-up is just going for a walk. Like, we're going to go for a half-hour walk, and that's part of our training. Because I don't want to stress them out even more. It's like, hey, what's going on? You doing okay? And you develop that trust, and that's where personal training takes a back seat to strength coach. And I think that's an important it's an important difference to look at of, are we training somebody or are we making somebody stronger? And we can do both, but sometimes we have to be a little bit of psychologist. We have to be a little strength coach. Sometimes we have to be a little bartender where, they're just talking to us and we're listening. And that's what they need. And being able to understand that, I think, is a huge part of our job, and understand that rest is a weapon. That we don't have to crush somebody in a workout. Them crawling out, of the gym, in a puddle of their own sweat is not necessarily a great workout. We got to make our athletes better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Totally agree. I think that's definitely one of the challenges I have too, is just from a, coaching educational standpoint. You have to kind of toe the line of what your role is as a strength and conditioning coach working with an athlete, kind of outside, but to complement them in their main sport without necessarily kind of going against what they're getting from their coach. But there is that, especially at a younger age. Well, I'll just do more. I'll just do more repetition, or I'll get in a couple more hours of, cardiovascular training if I'm a rower, or, get in a few extra sessions a week. And it doesn't necessarily always translate to greater fitness and better performance. It just tires you out more.
Yeah, exactly. 2 things, and it's so funny how things will stand out and then overlap. So we were talking about at Plan Strong this weekend. We're talking about high endurance versus low endurance athletes. And you would think, we think sport is high endurance, low endurance, but some people are just geared to higher reps. And some people are geared to lower reps. And you can have somebody, my brother-in-law is a powerlifter. He's training for a powerlifting competition. And we were talking about his programming. And I said, and he could pull a considerable amount of weight. And I said, so say 405. 405 is a fairly easy weight for him. I said, would you rather pull that 10 times, or would you rather pull that 2 sets of 5? And he goes, 2 sets of 5, for sure. I said, well, how do you feel? He goes, well, I can pull it 10 times. He goes, but I need like a 4 or 5 minute rest between that. And, that's about 60% of his, he pulls max about 640, 650. Okay, so 405 should be a pretty easy number for him. but he just fries after 10 reps. Well, we know that he's a low endurance athlete, and you can actually get tested for that. And right after I get done talking about that, I was listening to another podcast with Kelly Starrett, and he was talking about the exact same thing. And I was like, okay, well, this is probably pretty important considering I just heard it twice within 2 days. And if Pavel says it, if Pavel says it, it's important. But if you're hearing it in multiple places from two fairly respected people, I think that's something that we have to look at. We look at work capacity versus conditioning. Are they the same or are they different? Is a sport coach, do you want to be, conditioning your players after practice? Are we just running them for the sake of running them in hopes that they're going to last longer? Or do we have to look at our training to make them better, more efficient movers and thus increasing their work capacity? Are we looking at lactate and alactate zones and how long we're training in each? Because, once you're in your lactate zone, you've just expended a fairly high cost of training. It's going to take you a little bit of time to recover fully. And we have to understand that recovery time, that kind of goes back into the rest as a weapon.
For sure. Yeah, it does. And again, awesome job there, just kind of touching on a lot of the other variables and things we need to take into consideration. So coming back kind of into full circle a little bit, what are some considerations that you take into account for when you're looking at, say, a junior athlete? So in regards to a high school one versus somebody that's maybe in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, or a master's athlete, specifically for golf?
Well, I mean, you're just looking at volume. Their training time in the gym, what you're doing. Where was it? I can't remember where I saw it, but and being in my 40s, the quote that I heard was, there's not one person over 40 who says they wish they spent less time doing mobility when they were in their 30s. So masters athletes, it's probably doing a little bit more mobility than strength, but it's essentially keeping them moving well and then continuing to strength train. We don't want to stop strength training a masters athlete just because of the physiological effects of aging. We know about males losing testosterone production as they age. We know about sarcopenia or muscle loss for untrained individuals and people who aren't training. But it's also a group where we see some of the best strength gains in the shorter amounts of time when they do start strength training. And you can start even getting into special populations with that. When you get to some degenerative types of disease, you can kind of push those back. Much like the kettlebell, old age is undefeated, but we don't necessarily have to age. We don't have to get old. We'll get older naturally, but we don't have to get old. So strength training those populations, 50 and over, 60 and over, is still really important. It's just, managing volume because recovery time, resiliency drops a little bit. So you just kind of focus on those things. For younger athletes, I mean, man, you can try to pound them into the ground as much as you want. And they'll keep coming back for more. It's, for the ones who really like that aggressive style of training, it's managing their volume as well, making sure they're moving well. That's why it's one of the reasons why I love being at Lake Nona is we see a fairly diverse population of young professional golfers, guys just out of college in their 20s and 30s, and then we'll see another population in the 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s who are continuing to strength train, and they all need the same thing. They just need it in different doses.
Right. Now, do you find with your masters athletes, or maybe this is across the board, just most of them, unless you're coaching them or putting it into their programming or encouraging them to, they're just spending very little to no time making sure they do an adequate warm up.
Yeah. There are a lot of my professionals I don't have to worry about too much. I mean, if they're teeing off early, I mean, they're up pretty early, getting warmed up. It's getting them to understand what their warm up should be doing. For our masters athletes, yeah, they're grip it and rip it. They'll do a couple of shoulder turns. They'll wiggle their hips a little bit, and then it's grab the club and we'll loosen up while we go. But really, it's getting them to understand what their warm up should be. I would say a few years ago, I was more of a golf specific warm up, and after talking to a few other people and seeing things from a different perspective, and admittedly getting my head out of my lower cavity, and some of those things, that we've gone away from a sport specific warm up and done what a warm up should be doing. It should increase temperature, it should increase heart rate, it should increase blood flow, it should prepare the body for whatever task is about to be demanded of them. So that's really what we're focusing on, our warm ups and what they should be doing.
Awesome. Before we transition into the next topics and stuff, anything else you want to summarize or touch on in regards specifically to golf before we shift gears?
Mostly it's, not looking at, first of all, stay away from machines. They're garbage. Unless it's some sort of a dual action pulley, and shameless plug for Life Fitness, because I like their DAP for a lot of the stuff. But free weights that are going to challenge positions, are going to challenge stability, mobility requirements are the ways to go. But there's so many modalities that we can work with in golf that we can add variability without sort of the short attention span theater of training of, having to do a million things at once. We can, as long as we add in sort of the big six of squat, hinge, push, pull, loaded carry, and something else, some type of, rotation, anti-rotation training. As long as we hit those big six, we're pretty good. I understand the need for some of that, but I think for any type of explosive athlete, and I don't know, a human being in general, use a Swiss Army knife, but you don't have to use every tool all at once,
Yeah, well put. Okay, so you mentioned earlier, but you recently just kind of returned from the Plan Strong weekend that was in Pittsburgh, PA. So for those that don't know, one, what is Plan Strong? Two, how was it? What did you learn? What can you share with us?
Plan Strong is probably other than which we'll get to later, other than Charlie Weingroff's Training Equals Rehab seminar. Plan Strong is basically 2 days of Pavel Tsatsouline and Fabio blowing your mind and melting your face off with numbers and information. So basically what it is, it's they've got two parts of strength programming. Okay, one's more of a hypertrophy, the other's more of a power. And that's not to say it's not geared towards athletes in fitness. It's probably better geared towards weightlifting, powerlifting, etc. But it takes a Russian style of programming and shows you this is how we get strong. And the Western way is like push, deload, push, deload. When it's very difficult to maintain that. If you're not a good mover already, your body's going to shut you down and tell you it's time to stop. What this looks at is adding variability to training, not variety. It's very difficult to get strong through variety, and we can all kind of figure out where that statement goes. So it looks mainly at some of the big three of powerlifting, but we can add in a military press or single arm press for that of deadlifting, squatting, and bench pressing. But you can add that into other areas. You can add that into a military press. So for someone who's going for their SFG2 and they have to build up for their half body weight press, like this shows you how to build up your press from a known 1 rep max. If you know how many lifts you're doing per month, which we should all be tracking, it takes it and gives you some variability in what we refer to as waviness of loads. So it's not doing a hypertrophy program of just doing 3 sets of 8 reps or 4 sets of 6 reps. It's taking the total number of reps and it's waving them around so that we're not just crushing ourselves, but we are challenging the system. So it's still taken me a few days to get through the manual and really break down what I'm doing, what I've been doing, how do we make it better, and then how is it, and even if it is applicable to athletes and athletic development as opposed to general fitness. I think we're able to do it for general fitness a little bit easier because we're not taking in competitive cycles in seasons, but it's a lot. It was a lot of information. There were about 120 people there, and again, going back to standing on the shoulders of giants, there are some giants in our field. So Dave Whitley and Doc Hartle were there, so they were literally giants in stature in our field, and Pavel Mosak, who we both know, Cole Summers, Phil Scarito, Brett Jones. I mean, all the top people in Strong First were there, and it was just a really, really good overall weekend. It really starts to wrap your mind around the science of strength training.
Very cool, man. Well, I'm definitely glad you could share that with us and stuff, and I'm looking forward to attending one in the future myself.
Yeah, it's I highly recommend it. It really does get you thinking on our programming, and I think as a strength coach and probably for everyday life, I think we need to spend more time. Not just the desire to get better, but how do we get better? And a lot of that self-reflection, as in, is what I'm doing good enough? Athletes do that. Can I work harder at being great in my chosen field? But as strength coaches, I think we need to do the same thing. Am I good enough at doing this? Can I be better? If we ever stop saying, if we ever answer no to the can I be better, I think it's time to find something else to do. But it really helps break down, you go back through your old programs and, even some of mine from 6 years ago, I'm looking at going, what was I thinking? But I think that's the beauty in what we do. It's an exact science and an inexact science, all at the same time that it's art. Watching Fabio break down some of the variants and the rep schemes. And he says, this is where the science becomes the art. So we can wave loads. If we're building up a single arm military press, we don't necessarily have to start off with our single of a 40K and then drop down to a 36K and press that a certain amount of times. It's, you can press the 32 2 times and then do the 36 3 times, and then you drop down to the 32, and then you go back up to the 40. So you can, sort of play around with these weights and get the desired result, rather than, I'm going to do, 8 reps at the 32, and then I'm going to do 6 reps at the 36, and I'm going to do 2 reps at the 40, and so it adds that variability, but it gets you thinking of new ways to train, and can I make my athletes better by doing this?
Awesome. Yeah, definitely something I know I can continue to learn more about and improve upon myself. So very, very cool. Anything else to add on Playing Strong?
was joking around with a couple of buddies. Yeah. Bring paper, bring a calculator, and bring a lot of erasers. Do not write in pen.
That's awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of information and note taking to be done.
Yeah, there is. It was just it was a very fun weekend. Really, really happy I went.
Awesome, man. Fantastic. Okay, so I know you've got a big event coming up in the fall.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What is it? Who's coming? What's the date and everything? So take it away.
We are really excited to bring in Charlie Weingroff, and he's going to do his Training Equals Rehab talk, our seminar. It's like I touched on earlier, it's kind of one of those mind-blowing, face-melting weekends with another giant in our field. And Charlie's the director of performance with Drive 495 at Don Saladino's place in New York. He's also the director of performance for Canada Basketball, and has a resume about as thick as my Plan Strong book. But I went to his talk in Phoenix in May, and it's without diving too much into it, it takes the training and rehab continuum and it blurs it together in such a way that it's still separate, but we're not allowing ourselves as strength coaches who go to some type of mobility seminar to then all of a sudden become really bad PTs at fixing pathologies. And it takes PTs who may not venture into the strength training world too much to teach them how to strength train a little bit better, so that when a PT hands somebody back over to us on the strength side, it's not asymptomatic. It's not about absence of pain. It's about function and strength. You know, somebody who undergoes ACL reconstruction. Okay, you go in and we all call it rehab. But what you're doing is strength training. You're strength training a joint. It's just there's a scientific and specific amounts of load and rehab and movement that have to be done. You have to go through these protocols to get them back. But the idea of asymptomatic versus dysfunctional, we have to look, and this talk really looks at the function versus dysfunction model versus symptomatic, asymptomatic. Somebody comes in with shoulder pain to a strength coach. There are a lot of strength coaches that go, oh, I can fix that. So they go in and start doing mobility for their shoulder because, you know, for whatever reason, either they went to a seminar that taught them how to relieve shoulder pain, or they're afraid of sending that individual to a PT because a PT is going to say, oh, well, you need to be in here for, 12 weeks and you can't do any exercise. So it's taking that continuum and allowing certain things to be done to where they're not two complete and separate entities, which they shouldn't be in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I know. I follow Charlie's work myself, so that's going to be a fantastic event. When is it? I don't think.
Sorry. Yeah, it's November 5th and 6th here in Orlando. So that's a weekend. And for those of you that do not live in Florida, Florida is a pretty good place in November. As everybody else is going through their fall, and Indian summer is probably past. So your last little bastion and hope of sunshine has been quashed. So, and we're going to do it at in a new training facility here called Live Your Fitness with two good friends of mine who are both phenomenal strength coaches in our field. So we're going to host it there, and just based on the response that we've had already, we're expecting a pretty full, diverse group. I was talking to Jimmy Ewan is about another seminar we went to, and what he said again sticks out. He said the side conversations and conversations during breaks alone will be worth coming in addition to the information that Charlie has, because it really gets you thinking of what are we doing and is it good enough? We already have a very diverse group of, people who are just PTs that are coming up, people who are both PTs and strength coaches, and people who are just strength coaches. So it's, if you've never seen Charlie talk live, you have to come. If you have seen him, you will come to see him, because he brings a passion to his talks that very few people really, really do. And to say that he brings it, you can really see the passion that he has for what he does. It's phenomenal, and he's a force of nature.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it sounds like it's definitely a can't miss event for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I know he's doing something else the weekend after. I think it'll be his last T = R for the year. So I highly recommend. I highly recommend coming. The website to find it at is actually T=R.com. So it's TEQUALS.R.com.
And I'll make sure I include that in the show notes. So do you have any other topics or anything else you want to cover before we move into rapid fire?
Not really. I think we covered quite a bit.
Yeah, man, we did for sure. No, it was great stuff. Awesome. Okay. This is kind of one of my favorite parts of all the interviews. So, these are all some questions so the audience can continue to get to know you a little bit better. But these are a lot of fun too. So first one, given your current knowledge level and experiences in your life, what advice would you give yourself if you go back in time and talk to yourself 10 years ago?
Ooh, I don't know if that's rapid fire. That's a deep one, Joe. I don't know. I would probably say nothing. We all go back and say, I wish I knew this then, or what I know now I knew then. But I've had such a diverse path. It's taken me literally all over the world. I don't think I'd change anything at all. I might say, get into strength training a little bit earlier. But had I gone back and changed anything, I may not have been here in this position right now. So, in terms of when I got into it because of coaching and working in the business field for a few years, maybe get started earlier in strength training because I love it so much. But that's the great thing about our field is that we have a lot of people who left, seemingly ordinary business lives to get into this field. And it is a difficult field to be in, to try to separate yourself and to try to accumulate volumes of knowledge. Sometimes it feels like you're drinking out of a fire hose, but I don't know if I'd give myself any advice other than maybe just, get into doing this sooner. But who knows? If I did that, maybe I'm not where I am today. So I don't know if I'd change much.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, you all the experiences we kind of have underneath of us, shape who we are, and we always take something away from them, and it definitely helps lead us to the trajectory that we're currently at. So
yeah,
very cool. Definitely an easier question. The second one, what's your favorite strength training exercise? You got to pick one.
One? Ooh. If I had to do one exercise the rest of my life, I would say a Turkish get-up.
Boom. Awesome.
Boom. It's a Swiss Army knife. You cover all of the human movements, but there's so many ways that you can vary that movement. I would say that's it. And for any of my athletes and students that I train, they will not be surprised to hear that.
Very cool. Yeah, I would agree with you as well. That if I had to pick one, that would be it. Just because there's you can sneak in a lot of the other exercises. So while I'm only picking one, when I get to half kneeling, I could throw in a military press, or I can do the, high pelvis variation. And so there's a lot of extra stuff that you can work in. And I also think that exercise has such a long and a rich history that something like that doesn't kind of stand the test of time unless it's like really good and effective. So that's why it's still around, and we're continuing to teach and learn it today.
Somebody posted the history of the Turkish get-up a while back. I can't remember who. If you're listening to the podcast and you hear this, repost it and take ownership of you posting it, because I think it's awesome. But from what I read, the Turks used to make their prisoners do get-ups all day long as punishment. And it's funny because my athletes tend to think that them doing get-ups is punishment, and I love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal exercise for sure. Okay, how has your training changed today compared to 10 years ago?
I know what the hell I'm doing now. As I look back, it's like, what was I doing? Did I ever learn a thing while I was doing this? I tend to manage my volume a little bit better. I understand my body a little bit better. I'm much more precise. I understand the rest periods are important. I work on mobility a lot more now than I did. And then when we do it, I think sort of the old model is, you do a little bit of stretching, foam rolling, et cetera, at the beginning. You might do some static stretching at the end, and that's about it. And there's a big strength buffer zone in between. And, now I've gone to more mobility exercises between sets, and that happens to be my recovery. I don't pound myself into the ground now like I did. Resiliency and work capacity are my two biggest goals that I shoot for, in addition to getting my SFG2 knocked out. So add that in with the half body weight press, and that's what I'm working on.
Awesome, man. Very cool. Are you going for the level 2 in 2017, or are you trying to get it in this year?
I'm going to try to get it in this year. It just depends on where I get my half body weight press up to in time. So the goal is middle of October at Phil Scarito's gym.
Nice, awesome.
And any chance I get to be around Phil and learn, I jump at it. So that's sort of the goal right now.
Yes, for sure. Totally must piggyback and echo those sentiments, because I've been to. We were both at the SFG level 1 that Phil led last August. Crazy. We're coming up on a year almost, right around.
I know. It was such a great weekend.
Yeah. And then 2 of his user courses, one for the SFG, and then also the SFB cert. So highly encourage anybody out there listening, if they are thinking about getting into kettlebells, but not sure if they want to do the cert. If you are in the greater King of Prussia area, or Phil's traveling and doing a user course, 1-day user course, highly encourage you to check it out, because he's a phenomenal instructor, as well as any Strong First instructor. But I always take away and learn something new every time I'm around Phil. So
yeah, oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm gonna give him and one other guy a little bit of a plug. Justin Buckthorpe, who's a good friend of mine. He works with a number of tour players. He's based over in the UK. Justin had just gotten his SFG and was at Nona training Justin Rose. And JB and I got into talking about kettlebell training. He mentioned Strong First. I looked into the Foundations of Strength event that Brett Jones, great cook, put on, and it was at Phil's place in King of Prussia. So I flew up there for that, and then flew back for his one-day user course. So I flew up from Orlando to Phil's for a one-day course. Took that and then just started trying to, drink out of the strong first fire hose. And that's one of the reasons why I did the Boston cert, was because Phil was running it. My wife's training for her SFG right now. She's going to do her level 1 at Phil's place next month. I'm shooting for the level 2 with Phil. So, you can see some very strong individuals, but until you actually see Phil, who's maybe 5'6" with big shoes on, and he can half kneel press a 40 kilo belt. So he can half body weight a press from a half kneeling position. It takes an enormous amount of strength and tension that he can create. That's real. I mean, you look at Phil, I think that would be my redefined definition of strength, is seeing someone his size move the amount of weight that he can. And he's just a ton of fun to be around as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Okay. Have you ever had an injury? And if so, how did that injury change your training?
Well, I hadn't been injured, really ever. I somehow made it outside of the occasional sprained ankle through volleyball. I sprained an ankle and broke a finger, but that was it. And I consider myself both really fortunate, but I look back and it's not luck. I just spent an enormous amount of time in the weight room trying to keep my body healthy. And then last summer, I'm not an early morning lifter, and I had to get a workout in early. Part of it was deadlifts, and tweaked my back a little bit. Recovered pretty quick from that, fortunately. And then last September, I had same thing. I just had one really bad lift, and it was a bad enough lift to really throw my back off. So it's starting to feel probably about 80-90%, and I wouldn't say I've been training through it, but I've been training with it. I wouldn't say, I mean, it has adjusted my training a little bit. My training volume is probably decreased a little bit. I'm much more cognizant of how I feel, but I will say this, it's made me so much better at my job. I can really relate to people who have back problems now. Right. So being able to get through and say, yeah, hey, I know what you're going through. I've been through it. I've been going through it, and here's how I've been through it. When I first did it in September, I was back front squatting 10 days later. I obviously went to get some good soft tissue work done, went to a really good chiropractor, understood, what was happening. And then, about 3 or 4 months ago, I just had a little tweak. And it tightened everything up again. But you start to see from a strength coach perspective, like what altered motor patterns really are. Like, how does pain alter how we move? How does it alter how we breathe? It changes everything. So being able to come back from that and, have to adjust my training to accommodate that, not just to I guess to bring it somewhat full circle, but to go back and say, all right, I don't want to be asymptomatic. I need to be fully functional. So I need to be, swinging the 40 kilo bell again. I want to be snatching again. I want to be doing all this other stuff again. I don't want to be one of those people who go through life going, oh, well, I got a bad back and that's my excuse. And so I'm much more aware of, what my body's doing, how it's feeling, and how I move. And just like any athlete, I've got a phenomenal team that I put around me to keep my body moving well, which is important. I've got an awesome chiro, Chad Eldridge, the movement mechanic. I've got a great LMT, Ben Keys. They're both here in Florida, in Orlando, and they're outstanding at what they do. And that's who I refer people to, straight away. It's like, this is hurt, this is bothering me. I'm like, well, get out of my gym and go see Ben or go call Chad and have them take care of you, because I can communicate back with them and say, this is what's going on, and they'll tell me, and I'll like, oh, okay, so what are our protocols? Where are we going from here? Without the, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't be doing this. It's like, no, you should be able to do this. Let's get you back to where you're functional and able to do this. So, and then I found out why I was having those back issues. So I was able to not just say, oh, my back hurts, but say, this is the reason why, and this is how we're going to take care of it. So I would say, I'm, again, not regretting having back issues, but it certainly made me better at my job. And if I have to manage my back a little bit better to help my clients out, then hey, a little bit of a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's you definitely always learn from things that kind of tend to make you slow down a little bit and rethink everything. I know I have, for sure.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny when you read about it in a book. It's something else when you're actually going through it yourself. When I first pulled it, I'm like, oh, so that's what altered motor control feels like. And oh, this is what, this is how your breathing gets affected. So, yeah, it's an interesting way to go through it, but, I'm fortunate that I can really relate better, to my clients that are going through it.
Yeah, that's huge, because it really, training, strength and conditioning coaching, it's all that personal relationship's huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what's one thing that junior athletes should be doing more of to complement their training and their health?
Sleep better, eat better.
Nice.
Drink more. Sleep better, eat better, drink more water.
Awesome. Best tip to improve recovery post-training session?
Sleep better, eat better, drink more water.
Oh, there we go. I love it. All right. Last two questions. These are fun ones. All right. So what's your favorite meal?
Oh man. Anything that involves steak. Just give me a big old ribeye, and we'll slap some Brussels sprouts cooked with bacon, and if I'm not going to have a nice glass of wine with it, then I'll go with a good Spotted Cow beer from New Glarus Brewing Company in Wisconsin, because you can only get it in Wisconsin. So
that
I would say
good.
That's my. I would say that would be the meal of choice.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, Spotted Cow is excellent. I drank quite a bit when I spent a summer out in Madison, so it's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, final question. What's one book everyone should read?
Ooh. One book everybody should read. Just off the top of my head, I will go, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but I'm going to go with It's Your Ship by D. Michael Abrashoff. He was a Navy Rear Admiral, and it's a book on management. And it says, I think it's like lessons in management from the best damn ship in the Navy. And it talks about how he took over this, I think it was a communications ship. But when he got there, they were rated like last in the Navy in all of these competency categories. And he was trying to figure out why this was. And he completely changed his management cycle to empower the employees, to empower his sailors to make decisions, to get out of the old, this is how things were done, this is how things are going to be done, management style, because you have all of these phenomenal ideas on a boat full of people who have different ideas of how to get things done. And I just think it's a phenomenal book to really empower others and to start looking at things from a different point of view, to understand things from somebody else's point of view. When I was coaching in college, I gave it to, first and foremost, I gave it to our captains, but I want everybody to read it. And now that I'm coaching in high school, it's the same thing. I try to get our players to read it and get them to understand ownership of their team. And I reread it quite a bit. I think it's a great book.
Awesome, man. Well, I wrote that one down. I jotted it down. I'll include a link in the show notes, and I will add it to my always ever growing list of books to read.
Great. And then I'll just throw in anything by Dan John is always awesome. It's
nice.
It's funny stuff, and love the way he writes. So yeah. But it's your ship by D. Michael Abrashoff.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on. Really
absolutely. The time's flown by. I can't believe that. I know I can be a little verbose, but this has been a lot of fun. It's flown by.
No, I'm glad we got to finally make it happen. We've both been pretty busy guys, and congratulations to you and your wife. You got married earlier this summer, so a lot going on for you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a blast. She's a great girl, and I'm a pretty lucky guy. I've completely outkicked my coverage here.
Awesome, man. Well, just hang on the line, and let me give you a proper goodbye, and we'll wrap this one up.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Leo Training Podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you'd take a moment of your time, head on over to iTunes, and drop in a 5-star review. Or please share it on your favorite social media networks such as Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. It really helps the show to grow and reach new audiences. And be sure to tune in next week when I interview Strong First team leader Danny Sawaya, and we discuss what it's like shifting from being a power lifter to an endurance athlete as Danny competes in his first triathlon.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.